In this Neverwinter Nights Tactico, we're going to be exploring the Druid, looking at some of the unique characteristics of this character class and some of the different directions that you can take this build. So the primary thing as a Druid, it's going to be spell-centric, focusing on spells. It is a divine spellcaster. In Neverwinter Nights uses the D&D 3.x rule set, where it essentially has spells and spell-like abilities breaking out into two areas, divine and arcane. And while they all work off of a DC, a difficulty check, there's some in-game mechanics based on monsters that you fight, spell abilities, dispels that will work if it's divine or if it's arcane. So we've got a divine spellcaster. What this means with the Druid spells at the different levels, you're not locked in. You can literally pick from the entire list as soon as it becomes available. So the Sorcerer class, which is arcane, you have to kind of pick and memorize, similar with playing other character classes of that. The Mage, you can pick your spells, but you have to have them memorized. You have to have them in your spell book. Much like the Cleric, your spells immediately become available. So as you level up and gain access to new spells, not only are you receiving the entire set, you might only be able to cast one or two initially. That list is going to grow, which means all of the Druid spells, offense, defense, and utility, you get to access those and use those immediately. This offers a number of interesting solutions that you can wear, use, and apply. Now, in terms of war gear, based on the traditions, the vows of the Druid, that means you have access to a specialized weapon list. It's not quite martial weapons. It's not quite simple weapons. You've got the scimitar. You've got access to a dagger, club, quarterstaff. You also have access to some armor proficiencies, light and medium, with no spell penalty going against that. What this means is with the medium armor, some defensive spells, looking at Bark Skin, which is going to buff you a little bit, raise that armor class up, some magic armor, some magic items. Obviously, you're not going to get your alpha class, armor class up to the alpha level, say as a fighter or a paladin, but you're not a fighter or a paladin. You can get that number pretty high. This means that the Druid, surprisingly, could be a somewhat effective frontline fighter, especially with some magic gear, high armor class, and some of the spells that are utilized to buff up. Don't be afraid of getting right into the midst of combat, but you can also kind of hang back and utilize that. Now, secondary, animal companions, much like the Sorcerer, much like the Mage, you can summon a familiar. Your animal companion, and there's a list that you can pick from, offers a variety of utility in terms of abilities, in terms of what they can do, in terms of damage. It also offers another slot joining the party that could attack other targets. This companion, the synergy based on the lore, works extremely well with the Druid class. What you see is at the lower levels, both with Cleric and with Arcane casters, the spells at the lower levels you're going to quickly outstrip. They're good for levels 1 to 5, but then we kind of move past them and you reach a point where you might not even have them on your clicky bar. A perfect example would be Sleep. Sleep works really well in the beginning. In the first few levels, in the first few quests, being able to put to sleep 5 or 6 targets and not get overwhelmed, that's got some bite. But based on the DC level and based on the 3.x rule set of D&D, Sleep, like color spray, quickly becomes obsolete. Well, you've got Magic Fang. You've got some other buffs that you can utilize on your animal companion at the lower level, which stack with not only other buffs, but as your companion levels up, making it quite formidable and at least having it stick with the pack, so to speak. So we've got the divine clickies that we can use. We've got some good armor. We've got some okay weapons. We can focus on a martial type discipline if we have to, or if we're staying back and casting, we can always push forward if needed. We've got the annual companion that we can utilize. Next, of course, as you level up, looking at the idea of shapeshifting, being able to shapeshift into different elementals, different monsters. At the lower levels, yeah, it's kind of fun. You do it once or twice just to see the animated graphics, but it's really only till you get your elemental forms that they have some serious bite, especially if you can combine them with some buffs. It's not just something different or new to do. There are some encounters where being able to transform into that is extremely potent and useful, and they hit pretty hard. So it's almost like you have the ability to sidestep, and we're not even getting into prestige classes, to sidestep into an entirely different construct for your character by playing a druid. That gets very interesting. The next piece, and this is one that I think is often overlooked, and it's kind of interesting with what you can do, and it quickly scales up where the difficulty, for the most part, outstrips the game. I'm going to sidebar for a moment here. The Neverwinter Nights engine is based on D&D 3.x, where essentially everything is reduced to a DC, a difficulty check. The target operation has a number that you have to beat. That could be an armor class to score a hit. That could be a spell penetration to see if the magic works. That could be a saving throw that you have to beat to effect. This DC is very, very important. What you see in the skills is at some point, this DC number with your skills, it gets added to that virtual D20 that you have to roll. So if I have to beat a DC 15, I roll a D20 behind the scenes, or I should say the Neverwinter Night engine rolls that. Then you add any bonuses. Then you add any bonuses from your skill check or in character. What this means is things break down pretty fast in that with a good amount of skill points, you're getting a plus 10, plus 15 before you even roll virtually that D20. On top of that, magic items, buffs, bonuses, and situations. That means very, very quickly the game can't throw up a high enough DC level. And in certain scenarios, like an arcane caster, that's very powerful because you're just blasting stuff with missile storms and all that crazy stuff. But then the fact that it is a game engine and not a true role-playing game tabletop where the DM can make adjustments on the fly, that's not a criticism. It leads to some kind of interesting scenarios. So now we're going to sidebar back to the Druid. Animal companions and animal empathy, the ability to commune with an animal found in the game. Now, what exactly is an animal? It's a deer, it's a bear, it's a direwolf, it's a warg, it's a rat, it's some sort of creature, animal-based, not insect-based, but animal-based. You charm that and now add that as an NPC to your list. At the lower levels, walking outside, I charm a wolf. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Build up my wolf pack. In some of the modules at the higher levels, you're charming some crazy broken stuff that gets added to you. Now, there is a timer, and the state of the charm, the state of the target depends on the charm. If it's neutral, then when that effect wears off the empathy, it reverts back to neutral. If it's hostile, it reverts back to hostile. You can then buff that charm as you go, and it lasts longer and longer. So this, I feel like with the Druid, there's certain abilities and certain things you can do across multiple character classes. They've got a lot of the same clickies or a lot of the same things. But there's certain character classes that have something only unique to that character class. An example would be like the monk with the specialized fists. The druid with animal empathy, that is really, really fun and really, really interesting. It's another little kind of fun thing to do. Now let's talk about stealth. Stealth and druid, at first glance, don't really mix. You think of stealth, you think of an assassin, prestige class, you think of the rogue, you're thinking of maybe some monk builds where it's a primary attribute. Stealth is a cross-class skill. This is hide and move silent. So it's going to cost you significant points to put in as you level up for the druid. Usually, in terms of skill points, unless I'm building something different for a campaign, my skill points for the druid will be at the one-off levels. So at one level, I'll put points in animal empathy, persuade, concentration, because I'm going to be casting spells, and lore, and spellcraft. And then on the next level, I'll dump stats both into hide and move silently, because I'm paying that 2-for-1 penalty tax as a cross-class skill. I'm never going to have the stealth of, say, a rogue or an assassin, but I'm not doing backstab damage. You can get stealth up high enough before we even put in any gear. Common good gear item would be like a cloak with the +10 to hide. But the druid, as it levels up, it gains certain inherent stealth abilities. Your ability to hide in the woods and hide in nature. Now, this doesn't work in a city, but the game is pretty liberal in terms of the engine behind the scenes of what defines as woodlands and areas based on the definition of the tile sets. We can jump into tile sets and creation in greater detail. You're going to use it more than you think. So I've got stealth as a base, even though it's a cross-class skill. I'm going to naturally gain those bonuses as I level up based on druid abilities. And then on top of that, I've got some nice, interesting spell-like abilities that I can utilize. You can hide pretty well. You can work on that stealth. That also opens up some interesting options in terms of first strike spells and just kind of bypassing or recon or checking things out. The druid offers you at least 3 or 4 different play styles, all within that same package that you can play and try. It often feels like with the druid, the bard is supposed to be the jack of all trades, master of none. You can kind of do a lot in a lot of different areas. The druid, that's kind of the arcane equivalent. I feel like the druid is the divine equivalent of the bard. You really can do a lot and have a lot of different areas to pursue and explore that it might not be the primary character class that you play, but it offers a lot of interesting different things that you can do.